Hi, my name is Justin Brophy, and this is my presentation on HPV for Dr. Cody's microbiology class. So HPV is human papillomavirus. It's a member of the family Papillomaviridae, and it's a class 1 virus, so it has double-stranded DNA in its genome. It's encased in an icosahedral capsid with different proteins on the outside. Those proteins are usually used for attachment and entrance into the cell. And to infect the cell. It does not have a lipid bilayer. So this is your genome, your standard genome. This is specifically of HPV 16. And so there are different numbered HPVs. That's because there are over 150 different known HPV, like different species of HPVs. And so they started numbering them just in the order which they were discovered. HPV 16, actually a very significant one to this presentation and to HPV in general. But this is just a general genome. It's comprised of 3 parts. You have the early region, the late region, and the non-coding long control region, or the LCR. And so the early region, once you get into the nucleus to start replicating, because it's a double-stranded DNA virus, the early region is going to code, it's going to have about 7 different genes. The number actually will vary sometimes depending on the specific type. For instance, this has 7, and those are going to code for different proteins, which are then, it's called early because that's the early stage of those proteins are coding for, those genes are coding for replication of the virus. Creation of the capsid, things like that, and then as well as in 16 or other specialized ones, just special proteins. For instance, in this, you have 6 and 7 are involved in actually inhibiting apoptosis and creating that rapid and uncontrolled cell division. And then you have your late phase, which is 2 genes coding for basically proteins which will then present on the outside of the capsid. Those are used to attach to the surface of a cell and let the virus enter in so that it can infect the cell. The LCR is really just kind of there to hold everything together. Okay, before we get into this slide, the breakdown, I want to break down the HPVs because there's over 150 of them. They're broken into 2 categories, which are cutaneous and membranous. And cutaneous are going to infect your skin. They're spread through skin-to-skin contact. They're not known to cause cancer, but they do form these nasty warts, which will then present on your skin. Most commonly, hands, feet, and then some on the body. And the most common HPVs associated with these warts are going to be 1, 2, and 4. And then these are some of the ways that you can actually get rid of them. And so from left to right, we have, on the left, we have cryotherapy, which is going to be basically the freezing off with nitrogen gas of that wart that has formed on your skin. You can freeze it off. On the right, you have electrocautery or loop electrosurgical excision procedure, which is you just run an electrical current through a loop, and essentially that loop will cut right through the skin. And here in this picture, it's cutting out part of the cervix, which is probably precancerous. And so physically removing that can help prevent any cancer. This LEEP, a loop electrosurgical excision procedure, is most common, I believe, in cervical surgeries where you're trying to remove some of that tissue to prevent cancer. Then on the right, you have laser surgery, which you can just burn off the wart, and then far right, you have actual surgical removal. So this next slide is an interesting case that I thought was very interesting. It's extremely rare. It's known as epidermodysplasia verruciformis, which is shortly known as EV, and essentially it's a extreme susceptibility to certain types of HPV, and so you get that extreme rapid growth of your cells and replication and warts, and they just kind of begin to harden, and you get these tree-like kind of appendages, trunk-like appendages, and so it's known as tree man disease, is one of the common names for it. Okay, so this now is the mucosal HPVs. These are ones which you contract in any mucosal surface, so mouth, vagina, anus, urethra, any of those you can get mucosal HPVs in, and they're spread through sexual contact. And there's another classification here. They're split into what's known as high risk and low risk, which is just based on the risk and the chance that that HPV species will cause some form of cancer. In this situation, cancer is defined as when that uncontrolled growth and replication of the cells, they begin to grow down and they breach into the dermis, where then from there they can reach underlying tissues. So that would be the difference from just having a wart to actually becoming cancerous. And so starting off with the low risk ones, those are going to be HPVs which cause genital warts. I believe they can also cause warts around the face, around the mouth, and they will express themselves. Again, these warts, because they're low risk, they're not associated with cancer. There's a very low risk that they could ever cause cancer. So they're not particularly dangerous, but again, you still have these warts on your body and in your genital area. And the main ones which are associated, the main types of HPV associated with those genital warts are going to be type 6 and type 11, which together make up about 90% of genital wart cases through HPV. So those are the two big ones. Then you have the high risk ones. So these are HPV species which will actually infect the cell, cause that uncontrolled growth and replication, and lead to cancer. And the two main ones are going to be HPV 16 and 18. And their most common target is the cervix, and they cause together about 70% of HPV-related cervical cancer. And HPV-related cervical cancer makes up close to 90% of all cervical cancer cases. So those are a big deal, those HPVs. So this slide shows specifically cervical cancer and the percentage of HPV-related cervical cancers and which specific species those are attributed to. So you can see HPV 16, 59%, and then between 16 and 18 you have over 70%. Then you have a few other ones. You have 45, 31, 33. Those are also going to cause cervical cancer, or they have a high risk of it. But 16, 18 are really the ones to look out for. Now, this is kind of a two-part slide. So you have, these are CDC numbers. You have 79 million Americans have some form of HPV. These aren't all, they're not all going to cause genital warts. They're not all going to, cause cancer, but it's some form of it. Some of them are even asymptomatic, but just such a high number, and with 14 million new cases every year. And then the American Sexual Health Association estimates that around 80% of people in their lifetime will pick up some form of HPV. So because of all this, it's extremely important that we use the tools that we have, which are the vaccines, which have been created to prevent the spread of this HPV, even if it's not, symptomatic. If it's asymptomatic, you can still spray it to someone else. They may have symptoms, and so vaccination is something that is really, really helpful against this virus, because there's really no cure. There's just prevention and treatment. And so the vaccination, here are some little information about it. It's generally a two-part vaccination. You do it at around 11 or 12. However, you can vaccine as early as 9 and as late as 15. And it's one shot, and then 6 months later to a year, you get a second booster shot. If you happen to get it later, around 14 or 15, they actually suggest 3 shots. first one, then 2 months later you get the second, and then 6 to 12 months you get the third. And so that's if you get it later. And so the first vaccine to actually come out and be FDA approved, this first vaccine was Gardasil in 2006. And Gardasil contains capsid proteins from the virus. So it doesn't have any of the viral DNA. You can't get the virus from this vaccine. It just has the protein so that your body can recognize it and mount an immune response. And it contains protection against types 6, 11, 16, and 18. So that's really important because those are the main players in both low-risk HPVs and high-risk. In 2014, they came out with Gardasil 9, which contains those original 4, as well as protection against types 31, 33, 45, and 52, which put together, those are all high-risk HPVs, put together provides almost 100% protection against cervical cancer. So that's really great. And while there haven't been studies long enough, because it's only been out since 2014, they claim that this protection lasts over 10 years. So the vaccination is a really important part in prevention because of the numbers of people that can get HPV and you can develop cervical cancer. It's really important to vaccine people before they reach that age of sexual activity. That's why they try to do it, 11 or 12 years old, so that they won't end up contracting something like cervical cancer. Here are some studies shown. One is in UK and one is Australia, and they show basically the decline of cervical cancer cases after the implementation of the vaccine program. So you're trying to immunize your population, and you can see there's a huge decline in cervical cancer cases. That was my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, ask me in class.